welcome to our daily Facebook live stream. Delightful to have those of you back with us who have become regulars over the last 16 weeks, and it'll be 16 weeks tomorrow since we started this wonderful process. So for those who don't know me, good morning. My name is Bron Pearson and I'm from Pinnacle People Solutions. Our company provides HR services, advice, support, solutions, strategies, you name it, the full range of HR support to regionally based small to medium-sized businesses and not-for-profit organisations. And as we have been for the last nearly 16 weeks, we are here to support you through what has and continues to be some pretty challenging times as our economy, our society, our politics, everything is trying to navigate COVID-19. So we made a commitment 16 weeks ago to get up here and talk with you every weekday and talk you through the changes that and information that's coming through and what the impacts of that are, or those things are for business owners, managers and their staff. And we are still here and we will continue to do this while that information is chopping and changing fairly regularly, and while this process is still in a fairly rapid state of development. So good morning to those of you. We have been and will continue to be here live at 9:15 every weekday with updates, as I said, on new information and more detailed information on particular topics. So and those topics generally relate to staffing and business management, and they're broadly connected also to COVID in terms of matters that we think it's really important for business owners and their staff and managers to be aware of, and also topics that we've been requested to cover off. So don't hesitate to do that, to send us some suggestions of things you'd like to deep dive a little bit more into. We'd be very happy to do that. Please ask us any questions that you have as we go along, and I'll do my best to answer those. If I need to take them on notice, I'll answer them in the following morning's live stream. Outside of this, of course, you can contact our team anytime via Facebook, private messenger, of course, email or phone or website, YouTube channel, LinkedIn page, you name it, you can reach out to us. These Facebook live streams are being recorded every day, so we've got a lovely archive of them all up on our website and on our YouTube channel. They all have fact sheets associated with them to help you to be able to distill and put in place the things that you might decide you need to after having listened to one of our topics. So that's good, because good morning everybody. Not everybody can get up here at 9:15 every morning, so the good thing is that information continues to be available moving forward. So okay, so any sort of news now? We did slightly change the topic of this morning to do a JobMaker update, but we haven't had a huge amount of information come through. So we might defer that to tomorrow in the hope that we will have further information for you following the Prime Minister's indication on Monday this week that there would be further information about the JobMaker program becoming available. So I guess what I would do is just remind everybody about the COVID safe plan and templates and guidelines and so forth that the New South Wales government have provided for New South Wales businesses. And we will pop up a link for you to get access to that. We know that we've got a whole range of other limits in New South Wales in accordance with the COVID 3-stage plan that the National Cabinet have agreed to. That will be shifting from the 1st of July. And we talked about those with you on Monday, but just a quick recap. 50-person limit on indoor venues will be lifted on the 1st of July, but they'll still be subject to the 4-metre square rule and everybody needs to be seated. So for weddings and other venues, there won't be able to be dance floors or milling around bars, etc. The guests will need to be seated with a 4-metre square rule applied. Outdoor venues of up to 40,000 capacity will be able to fill to 25%, but again, subject to the 4 square metre rule, and it will need to be ticketed and seated. Funerals, as of Sunday just gone, can take place without limits on numbers, but with the 4 square metre rule applying. Closures will remain in place for nightclubs and music festivals but in New South Wales, but could be eased in August if the transmission rates remain low. And what we also saw this past weekend is opening of community centres, markets, tattoo and massage parlours, indoor and outdoor swimming pools, betting agencies and holiday homes, with obviously the associated restrictions. So in terms of JobMaker, which we will give you a further update on tomorrow morning, there is to be 15 major projects which will be given fast-tracked approvals by the Prime Minister as part of his JobMaker strategy, which is the focus on creation of jobs moving forward. And there is an intention to cut Commonwealth approval times in half, and that includes the priority fast tracking of the 15 major projects that infrastructure projects that will constitute a significant part of the government's JobMaker plan. And there'll also be an extra 1.5 billion put towards smaller infrastructure projects. And again, we're just waiting on some further detail about that, but we'll come to you with that as soon as we have that, and hopefully by tomorrow morning. Okay, so today's topic is on remote working and maintaining a positive workplace culture. Now, we thought it was really timely to talk about this, given that what we're seeing through clients and inquiries and so forth is a sort of a more semi-permanent, if not permanent, shift to the ways that we're working. And last week we talked about what's your new normal like and navigating the landmines. I think that was Friday's topic. And we talked about the fact that remote working is certainly likely to be a feature of many workplaces for the foreseeable future. Certainly not just during COVID, where the workplace restrictions, 4 square metre rule restrictions, etc., are going to mean that workplaces can't go back to how they were for the foreseeable future, and a lot of staff have successfully worked remotely for the last sort of 3 to 4 months and are now requesting to do so on a more permanent basis. So we thought it was really timely to be looking at that intersection between remote working and ensuring that you've got a positive workplace culture moving forward, because those kind of shifts to the way that that we work have happened very suddenly, and where a lot of businesses are still sort of catching their tails in terms of making sure that they're doing all the things that they need to be doing in terms of enabling remote working, looking after their health and safety obligations to their staff, supporting staff, making sure the tech works, as well as the communication, etc. So we thought it was a really good idea this morning to just have a good look again at remote working, but in the context of maintaining a positive workplace culture. One of the first things, if not the first thing, that I would strongly recommend that business owners and their managers do before taking any action at all is to understand the workplace culture as it currently exists in your workplace. Now, there's a whole range of ways that you can do that depending on how large your team is. You might anonymously survey staff, or you may just sort of, I guess, ask yourself a range of questions and your staff and see where you land. But it's really important to know what that culture looks like at the outset, and that way you can identify any existing issues that need to be addressed and target those with specific actions. So I guess some of the obvious questions perhaps that will help you to establish what your existing workplace culture looks like at the moment. And I must say, my definition generally of workplace culture is how things are done around here. And it's often the first thing that I'll talk to business owners and their managers and staff about in terms of putting in a HR framework or updating a HR framework, because I'm really keen to understand how things are done around the business. Because putting in place policies and procedures that bear no relationship or little relationship to the culture of an organisation and how it works is counterproductive, unless you're looking to shift that culture, in which case you need to shift how things are done around here, not just the frameworks and the boundaries and expectations that you're putting in place. It has to be accompanied by meaningful changes to how things are done around here. So the first question would be, to what extent do the staff that you have working remotely identify with each other and with being in a team? And this is something that a lot of business owners have struggled with in the very quick pivot to working remotely for some or all staff, and certainly not necessarily having staff all in the one location anymore. And it's a very important question. To what extent do your staff identify with each other still as team members and with being in a team? And if you're bringing on more staff at this time and some of them are going to be working remotely, or all of them are, and you're going to have a team that is physically disconnected, how are you going to make sure that that team sort of environment, context, relatability across individuals and groups continues? How well do your remote employees identify with your business? And do you know what that looks like and how they feel? What gaps or overlaps exist in communication? And communication is one of the things that we're going to touch on in a moment, in terms of 4 main things or 5 main things that I think you need to be really mindful of when looking at and maintaining or trying to create and maintain a positive workplace culture with a remote working environment. Is there important information, particularly, that is not reaching some employees? How do you know that you've got the information getting to people and that they're hearing what you're telling them? How are you making sure that that's the case? Do your staff fully understand how what they do in their role interacts with other staff, and how their role contributes to the overarching sort of intention and goals that your business has? Are they really clear about that visibility? Do they understand that really, really well? Because they're all questions that will help you to establish exactly what your workplace culture looks like at the moment. The other thing I would also say for business owners and also for managers within businesses, and that is that one of the things that we've seen over the last sort of 3 to 4 months, as businesses have desperately tried to shift up how they do things in order to continue to operate, remain viable, take advantage of opportunities, the whole raft of situations that we've seen is that some line managers have required training and coaching to effectively manage remote staff. And that's sometimes only now becoming something that business owners and managers are becoming aware of, simply because they had to pivot so quickly, that was not something that they thought of immediately at the time. And perhaps it's something that they now having to confront because of either conflict in the workplace or their staff are perhaps asking now about arrangements where they could potentially permanently work from home for some or all of the time. So it's really important to bear in mind that not you necessarily, you as the owner of the business, if you're the sole manager or one of only a few managers, or the managers that you have in place in your businesses, that they may not fully trust their staff to get the job done, or they may question a remote employee's commitment to the job. So creating a strong sense of mutual trust and respect is vital to having a positive team culture in the workplace. So if you've got any concerns that might be the case, that you might need your managers with some good training under their belt about how to help and manage remote workers, then please get in touch with us. We can certainly help you very much with that. It's look, remote working has proven and continues to prove to be a highly beneficial tool for promoting work-life balance and workplace diversity. However, it does require adjustments to workplace culture so that people who are working in whatever capacity they're working for your business and for your team, that they're able to do so feeling like they're a true member of the team, and they understand where they fit and how what they do contributes. There are 5 particular things today that I'd like to emphasise when it comes to you looking to establish or maintain a positive workplace culture that includes remote working. And the first one, I think, and the most important one, is leadership. And quite frankly, the do as I do, not as I say model really needs to shine here. So leadership and how you demonstrate your own sort of attitude and behaviours and actions during this time is particularly significant, possibly the most significant thing that you can do in leading your staff and your team through any periods of time, whether they be fantastic and or whether they be incredibly challenging. And this last 3 to 4 months particularly has thrown up all those sorts of issues for managers. Leadership inspires people or it demotivates them. It has the capacity very much to do both. And although different people respond to different styles and different circumstances, it's really important that you as the leader or one of the leaders in your business or a business need to adapt. You need to adapt that style to the circumstances and to what people might need. First and foremost, though, in order to be an effective leader, you need to look after your own health and well-being and make sure that you've got support. That's incredibly important. So number one is leadership. Number two is communication, and I'm going to unpack some of these more in just a moment. But the second is communication, and I can't state it highly enough. I know it's an overused word, but knowing where everyone is at and how they're doing at any particular point in time with your team is incredibly important. And it's really important to remember that one style doesn't fit all. So it's really important to adjust your communication style to staff needs, because each member of your team is likely to need something slightly different, and working out what motivates them, what they need, and providing that is a really key component of really good management and also, importantly, really good leadership. So communication frequently, often, and in a way that that your staff are going to respond really positively to as individuals as well as a team is incredibly important. So is the other C, big C word, consultation. And involving staff in discussions about the business and ideas moving forward makes an enormous difference to how connected people feel to the business. It also can allay concerns, particularly during the last 3 to 4 months when so many things have been in flux. In the absence of information, people will fill that vacuum with things they've heard or things they presume, or you know, a misread on body language over a Zoom call, or you know, a whole range of different things. So it's incredibly important to be communicating, as I said, frequently and often, and in ways that that your staff team are really going to appreciate. But also to involve them. Being included makes an enormous difference to staff, and people, research is telling us time and time again, are more productive when they feel a part of what is actually happening, even if what's happening is really challenging. To actually feel like you're making a positive contribution and that you can have an influence, where and if you want that as a staff member, it becomes incredibly important. So consulting with your staff, obviously all of the things that we've been hearing about in the last 3 to 4 months when it comes to employment law changes, things like JobKeeper, changes to awards, etc., all of them are prefaced on meaningful consultation. Not only consulting, but being seen to consult, and to do so fairly and equitably and transparently as far as you possibly can. So not only is there a lawful requirement, though, around consultation, but it is an incredibly powerful and effective tool. And here's the thing, as a small to medium-sized business owner, you know, you're not going to have all the answers. And there's every chance that the people that are working with you every day have some great innovative suggestions and reflections on how things are going, how they could be improved, what some of the options might be for consideration. All you need to do is ask them. So consultation is really important also. The other C, third C component of our 5-star list this morning is conflict. Now, Jess was talking to us last week, our consultant psychologist, last Tuesday, and that session is up and available for you in our archive. You can get that on Facebook, of course. You can also access it on YouTube, on our website, on LinkedIn. Any of those sites, you can get access to our previous sessions. And Jess's session last Tuesday was on handling conflict in the work environment. And here's the thing: conflict needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be dealt with. And that is one of the fundamental ways that you as a business owner and or a manager can show leadership. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. And here's the other thing I think that's really important for us to remember about conflict, is that a certain amount of conflict is actually really constructive. It means that people are bringing forward diverse opinions, that they feel able to share those differing thoughts. But you need to manage it really well as a manager or a business owner, and don't allow some voices to dominate others. It's incredibly important that everybody feels that they have a voice that can and will contribute when they have something to do so. So, and a means to do so. Dynamics are going to shift with remote working in terms of communication, in terms of potential conflict. So you have to, as the business owner or a manager, work even harder to be on top of where everyone is at. And that comes back to regular and frequent and appropriate communication with members of your team. But conflict is inevitable. Conflict is likely to manifest itself in different ways when we're working remotely. And having a real radar for it and being able to encourage diverse views and deal with conflict when it happens is incredibly important for you to do. The final C so we've got the leadership at the top of the tree, and then we have 4 C's, so 5 points today. Leadership being the first, communication we've raised, consultation we've raised, conflict we've raised, and finally, the final C is confronting performance and conduct issues straight away, as soon as they present themselves. Because, and I know I say this regularly, but I think it's really important, and that's why I keep saying it, is that the behaviour you walk past is the behaviour you accept. And nothing demotivates a team more and blows a hole in good workplace culture faster than not dealing with a performance or a conduct issue. So confronting those things and dealing with them, obviously in the strictest of confidence with the individual or individuals that might be involved. But let me tell you, the rest of the team can know, gets a good sense that when things are being addressed without needing to breach any confidences, and that has a huge impact on your workplace culture. So it's incredibly important to deal with those issues. So let's unpack some of these in a little bit more detail before we finish off today, and just to give you some tips and strategies around achieving and maintaining a really good workplace culture, which includes remote working. It's not where you work, quite frankly, it's how you work. And it's really important to delineate between the two. With any businesses that have some or all of their staff working remotely, habits you form while working from home, such as booking meetings for when you're in the office, is going to either set you up well or not set you up well for success in a fully remote context. So it's incredibly important for you as the business owners and managers to be aware of how your staff are going, and in terms of working from home, and for every staff member listening to this to really think about the habits that you've formed while working from home, and whether they are positive or not perhaps, and how sustainable they would be to you potentially working remotely for a longer period, or potentially for some or all of the time. As a business owner or manager, I'm hoping that further to the sessions we've run previously around remote working and responsibilities and so forth, is that you've got long and short-term plans with your teams around remote working. And you need to consider the processes that you have and whether they're optimized now and moving forward for working remotely. So I know we all had to pivot really quickly, but it is important to be asking those questions. So plans also don't need to be set in stone. They can be changed and they can be flexible. And in fact, the best ones are flexible with options considering for a few possibilities. So your role as the business owner or a manager in your business is to champion those changes and to empower your team. Even if you're not managing a team directly, it's really important to lead by example. A big change can feel overwhelming for your team members. So it's your time to shine. Show your team that you're committed to their health and safety, that you trust them, and show them that when faced with big obstacles, you are agile and you can support them even from a distance. So that leadership piece is incredibly important. And continue to communicate like you more than you have ever done before. When working 100% remotely or part of the time, some of your team remotely, you need to think about the conversations that get missed. Do you talk to stakeholders in the lift after a meeting, or chat to people in the kitchen while you're making tea, or sitting with colleagues for lunch? So this is likely to be one of the cornerstones of your success as a leader or as an individual, when you think about your communication at both a high level but also at the level of that amount of detail. You need to create communication channels that show how best you can continue to encourage and grab those communications as people might be working remotely. It's really important to keep your communication transparent, open, and consistent, and also suitable to the people that you're continuing to have those relationships with. Also, one thing I would say in terms of written communication is don't rush emails. Now is the time to reflect and edit. It can be quite an intense period and a tense period at the moment, and it's harder to minimize an email that's received poorly now that you're not in the same office. And look, when we're in the office together or in a workplace together, we pick up a lot of cues while we're sitting next to someone, or we have eye contact and visual contact with somebody. You pick up updates on projects, on someone's overall mood, and often have a forum to freely collaborate without the kind of barriers that we have in place with remote working. It's also, as much as it's important to keep communication channels open for work updates, it's also critical to recreate channels for the missed social interactions as well. Some roles mean your interaction levels will stay high, but other roles will have far less interaction. So don't forget anyone or leave anyone behind. So some of the things that you can do to add some social or some lightheartedness to the teams that are working remotely is coffee breaks. So book in to see people over Zoom or whatever means for tea and a chat. Create channels specifically for social topics. We in our team use Chanty as a messaging function, and we've got the COVID, we've got a COVID memes page where people can put up funnies and insights and things that make them have a bit of a chuckle and give some light relief. Have some themed meetings. Our lunch meetings have turned into theme meetings, and we had winter was our theme last week. Next week our theme is Queen, in honour of the Queen's birthday. And you can have dress ups, you can have themes, give opportunities for staff to video in for lunch altogether, whether it's themed or not. And while technology is hugely important, and obviously it's important to make sure that we're not getting frustrated at the technology not working, it's probably not as important as you think. So what studies show us is that your skills are more important than your tools, even in remote working. So the other thing I would remind business owners and managers about, in the context of everything we've talked about this morning, and in terms of remote working and how and the relationship to having a good positive workplace culture, is look, throw out your KPIs a little bit at the moment. It's unrealistic to expect to get the same outcomes, or even to some extent predictable outcomes, while your team is dealing with a pandemic. Its effects on their lives, the economy, and their role, all while working remotely. We all need to move forward with compassion and trust, and we need to continue to do that. All of these factors will be a challenge, but remote work itself, outside of external issues, can be a hugely successful strategy. And a lot of businesses are looking at how it's going to be a part of their business for the long term. Obviously, just before we finish today, it's really important to reflect on the fact that workplace culture, or how things are done around here, which is how I like to refer to it, significantly affects your team members' performance and productivity. Having a workplace culture that's positive does produce increased employee engagement, team morale, and job satisfaction. On the corollary, on the reverse, however, poor organisational culture may lead to increased employee turnover and decreased motivation. And so that is another reason why it's incredibly important for you as business owners and managers to have a really good pulse check on an understanding of what your current workplace culture is and the kinds of changes you might want to introduce, or that it's really good and ways that you can keep it ticking along really well. One of the benefits of remote work, of course, is that it promotes workplace cultural diversity by accommodating different staff members' needs. Whether that might be somebody who has dependent children, it might be a better environment for somebody who is experiencing mental health issues, who might need a more controlled work setting or the flexibility to attend appointments. While there are many benefits to remote working, obviously that situation, temporary as it might have been for you, but considering that it might be something that is part of your business moving forward, it also requires adjustments to your strategies for workplace culture development. If culture is ignored, if the way things are done around here is ignored, the advantages and disadvantages of remote work may be cancelled out. Although employees might be more productive and free from workplace distractions, they may also struggle to build and maintain connections. And this is because there are often fewer opportunities to communicate and get to know one another, particularly if you've got new team members or people coming on board. These things become even more significant. On top of this, with remote working, it can be harder to maintain a sense of team morale and a shared sense of purpose. And it might lead to people working in silos, lost productivity, or the duplications of tasks. So this is where your 4 C's become incredibly important. Well, your L, your leadership, and then your 4 C's become incredibly important. So let's look at those again. Leadership. Make sure that you're looking after your own health and well-being as a leader as well, first and foremost, because you're no good to anybody else if you're not looking after yourself. And do as you do, not as you say, is a really important reflection for leaders. Secondly, communicate often, frequently, and in ways that your team respond to and that they need, and do it in lots and lots of different ways, and perhaps more than you would normally think to do remotely, simply because you're trying to provide opportunities for people's thoughts and opinions and contributions to come forward in ways that hopefully make up for the coffee room chats, the discussions in the hallways and in the kitchenette and those sorts of things. So incredibly important to communicate, to consult with your team. Them feeling like they're part of this journey with you and your business is incredibly important. Manage conflict. It's healthy. Having a certain amount of conflict is healthy. So be on top of it, manage it, let it be aired, and resolve things. Don't leave things unresolved. And finally, confront poor conduct or performance. Get in there and deal with it, because the behaviour you walk past is the behaviour you accept, and I promise you it's impacting your workplace culture. It's not just sitting as a list of things on your to-do list. In terms of some practical realities moving forward from today's session, just a reminder to make sure that you understand your obligations to your staff. It's incredibly important. Make sure you understand where they're at and how they're going and how they're feeling. Communicate with them regularly and often. Consult them regularly and often. Keep records. Keep all of your records in writing. Make sure that everybody has good and effective employment contracts and position descriptions in place, as well as really good policy and procedure that establishes your expectations and reinforces how things are done around here. If you're unsure about anything that we've talked about this morning, or there's anything that we would be able to support you with, which there's many ways in which we could support you with the topic today in terms of remote working and maintaining or developing and maintaining a positive workplace culture through these really challenging times, get in touch with us. We'd be delighted to help you. At the very least, have a no obligation free conversation to begin with about where you're at, where your business is at, and you could well walk away from that with some fantastic information and strategies that you can put in place straight away. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you've got particular questions about your business, contact us anytime. Our details, are provided here in the chat screen this morning. Please join me again tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be looking at what to expect when employees are returning to the workplace, so the other end of our spectrum. Please join us and invite your colleagues and friends and family to do so as well if you think they'd really benefit from that conversation. And in the meantime, please hug the people that you're allowed to. Wave cheerily at those that you yet can't. Stay safe, stay distant, wash your hands, and we'll really look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you so much.